Welcome to episode 1 of Know Your AML. I'm John, and today's podcast breaks down the complex world of anti money laundering and counter-terrorism financing, or simply AML. This series of podcasts are for business owners and professionals who want to understand not just the laws, but the why behind them. We recognize the fact that you are a specialist at what you do. And while AML is a part of doing business in Australia, you're here to learn about an area that you're not a specialist in and you want it explained in plain English. So let's begin. Australia's AML regime might seem like a tangle of rules and reporting, but it all stems from one basic principle: keeping crime out of our financial system. It all started gaining momentum in the early 2000s. Globally, concerns about terrorism financing were escalating, especially after 9/11. At the same time, organised crime was becoming more sophisticated, laundering billions through banks, casinos, and even seemingly harmless services like real estate. Australia, like many other developed countries, needed a modern response. And that came in 2006 when the AML CTF Act was passed. The 2006 Act replaced an older law from 1988, which mostly focused on financial institutions reporting suspicious transactions. The 2006 Act was a game changer. It brought in a whole new framework for identifying customers, verifying their details, monitoring transactions, and reporting anything suspicious to a government agency called AUSTRAC. Now, AUSTRAC, which had been around since 1989, took on a much larger role. It became both the regulator of compliance and the collector of financial intelligence. The 2006 law introduced what's known as a risk-based approach. This meant that businesses needed to assess the risk of money laundering and terrorism financing in their services and tailor their compliance programs accordingly. From day one, this law had bipartisan political support. The Howard government introduced it, and Labor backed it in Parliament. The goal was clear: protect our financial system and, by extension, our national security. But even as that law came into force, it was always meant to happen in phases. The first phase targeted obvious financial channels: banks, remitters, casinos, and later cryptocurrency exchanges. What's been missing for nearly 2 decades is the second phase, known as Tranche 2. Tranche 2 refers to the extension of AML obligations to what are called designated non-financial businesses and professions, the so-called gatekeepers. In simpler terms, that's lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, and trust and company service providers. Why does this matter? Because criminal networks are maybe cleverer than you think. As soon as regulation clamps down in one sector, they shift to another. And in Australia, real estate, legal services, and accounting have been known vulnerabilities. For example, dirty money can be cleaned by purchasing high-end property through a trust structure, hiding the identity of the real owner. That kind of activity hasn't always been caught because the gatekeepers weren't regulated. AUSTRAC and other agencies have warned for years that billions are being laundered through these unregulated sectors. Reports from the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission have put the estimated cost of money laundering to our economy at up to $60 billion annually. Terrorism financing is also a risk. Unlike drug trafficking, terrorist operations don't need massive amounts of money. A few $1,000s, moved discreetly through an unregulated crypto wallet, can fund a devastating act. That's the kind of loophole regulators are trying to close. Back in 2016, a statutory review of the AML regime recommended expanding it to these Tranche 2 sectors. But year after year, the reforms stalled. Industry groups pushed back, warning of overregulation. Governments shifted priorities. And all the while, international pressure mounted, particularly from the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, which sets global AML standards. By 2022, Australia was one of only a few developed countries not to have implemented Tranche 2 type reforms. That became a reputational risk. There were whispers that Australia could be put on a FATF grey list, a public sign that we weren't pulling our weight in the fight against financial crime. Then in 2023, the tide began to turn. The Albanese government picked up the pace. Under Attorney General Mark Dreyfus, a full consultation process was launched. Over 270 written submissions came in. Dozens of industry roundtables were held. The message was clear: it was time to act. Finally, in December 2024, the AML CTF Amendment Act was passed. It received royal assent just before Christmas. The new law brings Tranche 2 into effect. From July 2026, lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, and others will have to implement AML programs, verify their clients' identities, report suspicious activity, and in many cases, ask for proof of the source of funds. Virtual asset providers are also covered more comprehensively. AUSTRAC gets more powers too. It can now conduct compliance assessments across this wider range of professions. This is more than box ticking. It's about making sure systems are in place to catch criminal misuse early. So, what does this mean for business? If you're in one of the newly regulated sectors, now is the time to prepare. The law might not take effect until 2026, but compliance isn't something you can scramble together in a few weeks. You'll need to work out whether your services are considered designated services under the Act. Perform a risk assessment and create a compliant AML CTF program. Train your staff and put policies and procedures in place. Put in place systems for verifying customer identity, ongoing screening against watch lists, transaction monitoring, enhanced due diligence, incident management, and reporting to AUSTRAC. And importantly, embed a culture that understands why all this matters. It's not just about avoiding penalties, it's about protecting your business from being used, willingly or unwittingly, by criminals and foreign threat actors. AML compliance doesn't have to be a burden. With the right tools, processes, and support, it can be streamlined. And for forward thinking businesses, it's also a signal to clients, investors, and regulators that you take integrity seriously. The history of AML in Australia is one of slow but steady progress. And now, with Tranche 2 finally in place, it's entering a new era, one that includes a much wider slice of the business community in the fight against financial crime. And that's where we'll leave it for today. Thanks for listening to Know Your AML. In the next episode, we'll be talking about the practical steps for setting up your AML program, what you need, and how to get started without losing sleep. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with your network. Until next time, stay compliant, stay informed, and if you'd like help with all things AML, contact White Light AML, the sponsors of this vodcast.